Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Story Time. Wait, before we get started, everyone, give me a high five. Cool beans. Thank you. Right, can you remember about who we've been learning about in the last 2 weeks? Can you remember the man's name? Say it for me. Let me hear. That's it. We've been learning about Joseph. Well done, guys. All right, so we learned about last week that Joseph was tempted to do something naughty, but because he was a good guy, he decided to flee. Do you remember that? He fled from being naughty. Were you able to do that this week? Did you run away when you were tempted to do something naughty? I'm sure you did. I hope you will remember to always do that. All right, but this week we're going to learn about Joseph and...
Oh, let me out of here! Gotcha!
So glad that Charlie's really not in jail, but that's what we're going to learn about today, is Joseph being in jail. Remember when he fled the king from doing something naughty, the king got cross and threw him in jail? All right, so now we're going to carry on today. So while Joseph was in jail, he didn't grumble, he didn't get cross or angry. He knew God had a plan and he just had to trust God. So do you do that when things don't seem to go your way? Do you either have a tantrum, or are you like Joseph and you don't grumble, but you just honor God and you are a good man and you just serve God faithfully? So Joseph serves God faithfully in jail. And the jailer thinks that he's such a good guy that he makes him in charge of all the other prisoners. Isn't that amazing? Okay, but while he was in jail, there were these two men that worked for the king. One was a baker and one was a cupbearer. All right, and these two men were quite important in the king's castle. But one day they did naughty things, and the king got cross, and he threw them in jail with Joseph. And the jailer made Joseph attend to them. He made him look after these two men. So one morning they woke up, and Joseph saw that the baker and the cupbearer, they weren't looking so happy. They were a little sad. So Joseph, being a good friend and a good person, said, "Why are you looking so sad?" And they told him that they had had some dreams. They had been sleeping and they had had dreams during the night, but they didn't understand what they were about. So Joseph said, "My God can interpret dreams." And so the baker and the cupbearer told them his dreams. And Joseph said to them, "Well, my God says that for the cupbearer, this dream means a good thing, that the king's going to be happy with you and he's going to put you back working with him and you're going to serve the king once again." But with the baker, Joseph was sad because the baker's dream didn't mean that. The baker's dream meant things are not going to go so well with him. And sure enough, a little while later, the cupbearer started serving the king again, and the baker, well, that was a sad story. Things did not go so well for him. But before the cupbearer went to serve the king again, Joseph stopped him and said, "Listen, please remind the king that I'm here. Please remind him that I'm here in jail and let him just think of me." And I think he was hoping that the king might have a soft heart towards him and let him out. But you know what? The cupbearer forgot all about Joseph. Oh, that's so sad. But 2 years later, can you believe it, after the cupbearer started serving the king, it was a whole 2 years later that one night the king had a dream. And he didn't know what it meant. But then the cupbearer, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. And he said, "King, do you remember that Hebrew man? Well, he could interpret my dreams. He could tell me what my dreams meant. And so I think he might be able to tell you what your dreams meant." The king was so pleased because all the other men were not able to help him. So he was a bit frustrated. So he said, "Well, bring Joseph to me." And so Joseph went before the king. And Joseph said, "Well, why don't you tell me your story?" And the king then went and told Joseph his dreams. And the dreams went like this, that one night he said, "I was sleeping And I dreamt that seven, can you count up to seven? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That 7 fat, good-looking cows, that they came out of the river and they started eating on the reeds. But then after them, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lean cows, very thin and like they looked like they were starving, and they were ugly looking cows. Shame that they came out of the river and they ate the good looking fat cows. You would think that their tummies would have looked fat and healthy after that, but they didn't. They still looked very skinny and unhealthy and not good. He said, but then I had another dream, that there was a single stalk of grain, of wheat that grew, and on it 7 heads of grain started growing on the stalk, and they were big and healthy and good looking. But then another 7 heads grew, and they ate all the 7 good looking heads. And these little 7 heads that grew the second time round also looked scrawny and thin, and they ate the good looking ones. But still, they weren't looking good afterwards. The king was so perplexed. He was like, what does that mean? Well, Joseph said, my God interprets dreams. And he says that this means that we in Egypt are going to have 7 years of plenty. We're going to have 7 years of good crops. Things are going to grow and our lands are going to look amazing, and there's going to be lots of food that we can get. But then after that, it means that 7 years of famine, of a drought. A famine means that there's going to be dryness and the crops are not going to grow, and there's just going to be no food growing. And so there's going to be nothing for the people to eat. So Joseph said, King, if I were you, I would hire a really good man who knows how to handle the land. And while there's 7 years of plenty, then he can help manage that and store up all that good food in warehouses and storerooms, so that when we have 7 years of no food, then at least we have food to help the people, and we can give them the grain that they need to make bread and things like that, and they can at least have food. Well, the king was super pleased with Joseph, and he was so impressed with Joseph that Joseph could interpret dreams, and that he knew how to look after the land and manage the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. So he put Joseph in charge. He put him in charge of the whole land. Can you believe that? So Joseph became vice president. That's amazing. From being in jail to vice president. Is that a coincidence? Do you think that just happened by chance? I don't think so. I think God had this all planned. God is always in control. God knew that Joseph was going to be in jail. God helped Joseph while he was in jail and looked after him, and he blessed him by being a good man and putting him in control of all the other prisoners. And then God also put Joseph back before Pharaoh, and so he knew that he could help the Pharaoh manage the land. So God had that all planned. But 2 years in jail is a long time, so there's a lesson we can learn. With Joseph learned that he had to be, number 1, patient. We have to be patient with God. When we don't understand why things happen, and things might happen that don't feel nice, or things are not going well and we cross and angry, we have to be patient with God. And number 2, we have to keep on trusting God. Okay? Do you remember those 3 things we learned right in the beginning? That God is sovereign, God always keeps his promises, and that God is always faithful. And here, Joseph, even though he was in jail, okay, he knew that God was sovereign, that God keeps his promises, and that he's a faithful God. And so Joseph trusted God, and God put him where he wanted to be. One last thing is that God put Joseph in charge of all the land of those 7 or 14 years, because he had a plan for Joseph's people, the Israelites. And we're going to learn more about that next week. All right. Now I've got something special for you guys to do, and it's called craft time. Yay, it's craft time, guys. So I hope that you've got some paper with you. And today you're going to need some glue. And let's see what we can make today. So I had Robin help me and Charlie help me today. And we made this. This is a chain. And this will help us remind us that Joseph was in jail. Okay, so that he was behind bars, and they might have even tied him up with chains when they first put him in jail. Okay, so we're gonna make this to help us remind that Joseph is in jail. And what we did was that we took a piece of paper like this, and we got a whole lot of them, and then you take it, and I'm going to show you how to end it off. So you take it through the chain like this, and then you fold it and you glue it like that. Okay, and there we go. And then the next one you'll slip underneath here, and then you'll make another circle, and so on and so on. So look at this. Okay, so this will help us remember that Joseph was in jail and that God always helps us. There's another craft that you could do if you want to, and you can make a nice looking bag like this. You can do any shape you want, and this is to remind us that God helped Joseph get out of jail. He allowed the king to have dreams and for Joseph to help him interpret his dreams. And so he landed up being ruler over all the land, and he helped the king take up all the wheat and all the food of the land and store it up for when they really needed food, when they started getting hungry. Okay, so we put some popcorn seeds here and we drew a nice bag. Okay, so Joseph was in jail and he was stuck in there and he was worried, but he worked really well for God and God helped him get out, and now he could help God save the land and the people. Okay, and the verse that we want to learn today, I've even got a verse for us, and it's from Matthew 28 verse 20, and I want you to read it. It says, I am with you always. Will you remember that? He was with Joseph when things were not going well, and he helped Joseph. So I want you to remember that whenever things are not going well, God promises and says that I am with you always. Maybe you can write this on a piece of paper and stick this up on your wall. All right, guys, so glad that you could join us again today, and hopefully we'll have another lesson next week. And so until next week, bye.